We love hip
Thanks for doing this
hop.
with me today, man. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Well, listen, I want to give you a proper introduction here so that we can get into our conversation. I'm going to just basically just go straight off of Google from where I found when I was doing my research.
Yeah.
I found a nice little write up from your Wikipedia. We have a business professional, okay, co founder of CapLink, and
Wait, I don't have a Wikipedia. Believe it or not, there's another Eric M. Jackson out there. So this guy's in that guy you got is in San Francisco.
Ooh. Okay. Well, listen, from what I've been able to pick up from going through your Instagram and just whatever research that I have been able to do, I feel like
Mhm.
you're a business insider. Can I say that?
Yeah, I would say I'm a hedge fund manager and a financial analyst as my day job. So basically, I get paid to manage other people's money and spend a lot of time studying companies' filings, what they're saying, what sort of like the hidden language behind maybe what they're not saying, and to try to make investment decisions based off of that. And when it works out really well, the returns can be amazing, better than sports betting, better than playing the lottery and all this kind of stuff. So like one of my big successes a couple of years ago is I invested in this company called Carvana, which is only in the States. Up here, there's a version of it called Clutch. Basically online buying and selling of used cars. And it was going through a really tough patch. It was basically, a lot of people thought it was going to go bankrupt. It got down to like $3.50.
Right.
Today it's over like $400. And so like
Wow.
that's the opportunity that happens in stocks. And if you call it right early, you can make a lot of money. But last year, just to kind of cut to Drake, I found there was another stock that I was in called Open Door, which is also only in the States, where you can buy and sell houses online instead of using your like real estate agents.
Hmm.
And so their commission comes out of it. And it was also like very cheap. I got it when it was like 73 cents. Today it's like almost $5. But I led something you probably remember, if, like a few years ago, there was like a GameStop movie, and like this, Roaring Kitty guy who like led this like retail investor movement where they sort of like were suddenly GameStop went up a lot.
I remember.
Well, so I led a similar kind of campaign. It was like the biggest like retail investor campaign last summer in Open Door. And suddenly the stock was taking off, and everybody was getting excited. People were investing, and they were like hoping they're going to make a lot of money. It was going to be like the next Carvana. And so then one day I'm like just having dinner with my family, and my 16-year-old son at the time said, "Hey, Dad, like if you're trying to like get the word out about Open Door, and you go on CNBC and you go on Bloomberg and all these like business channels, but like most of the world doesn't watch those channels. And so how do you reach them? How do you tell them about it?" And I said, "Wow, that's a good point, Julian." And he said, "You know what you should do, Dad? Because we live like literally like two streets over from Drake's house." And he's
Right.
like, you should go in front of Drake's. I was like, "Go in front of Drake's?" Like, what do you mean? He said, "Well, there's this big TikTok trend right now where people try to do something every day until something happens. And so you could go in front of Drake's and you could have a little sign and say, 'Hey, Drake, I want you to buy like one share of Open Door.'" And it would probably get a lot of attention because who's this like old like hedge fund manager, standing in front of Drake's house is kind of like controversial. So I started to do that
And
last August,
so
and
let
it
me
got a
stop
lot
you
of
for
attention.
so
Yeah.
let me stop you for 1 second so I can show the people right here.
Right.
Bada boom, bada bing. All right.
Yeah.
So this is how I found you through these
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah. This is on Instagram.
All right. So I'm just gonna play the one that you have pinned over here, and we'll just play
Okay.
a minute of it.
UMG contract comes up for negotiation this year. He said so himself in a January 2025 court filing, and the same filing accused UMG of acting, quote, in a manner to reduce that bargaining power in advance of upcoming negotiations. So those were Drake's words in the court records. But here's what most people miss. Drake already owns his post 2021 Masters. Certified Lover Boy, onward. The fight isn't about old music, it's about every album he makes from here. So let me show you what the next contract is worth. In 2016, Frank Ocean walked. He released one album, Endless, to fulfill his Def Jam contract. And then he released Blonde Independent 24 hours later through his own label. Week one, he got 275,000 album equivalent units. Number one debut. And he kept $1.77 million. If he'd stayed to sign Def Jam, he'd have netted 383,000. So he made 4.6 times the money by going independent. One artist, one contract maneuver. Sir Lucian Grange, UMG's CEO, responded by banning single platform streaming exclusives across the entire company globally.
Wow, 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 wow. So, and just for the listening audience who are tapping in and don't know who the voice is who I'm speaking to, I'm speaking with Eric Jackson. Like I said, business professional, but also, content creator. Dare I say content creator extraordinaire right now, because you've been going viral.
Well, so today was my 273rd straight day making those like morning dog walking videos. So
Wow.
it started, so weekends and holidays included. So it started last August in front of Drake's house. And I was there for like maybe 10 days in a row talking about Open Door. But then I was like, man, like I'd met some Drake security team and like they were cool and everything. But I was like, man, it's going to get kind of boring if I just keep coming in front of Drake's house. So I went to other parts of the bridle path and like, oh, here's like, Conrad Black's house. Here's, Gordon Lightfoot's old house or whatever. But then I just started walking in my own neighborhood and I pivoted from just talking about Open Door. Drake never bought the share of Open Door, by the way, to talking about stocks in general. But then when the ice sculptures thing happened, like whatever it was 3 weeks ago in the city, I went down there on the second night and I saw it and everything. And I was like, man, like I should go back to my Drake roots in these daily videos. And so I wanted to kind of start making videos leading up to the Iceman release. But I was thinking like, well, what am I going to talk about? And like, I'm not like a hip hop expert, although I've been listening to hip hop since the early 80s. But I said, like, maybe I can bring my business perspective to bear. And there's obviously lots to talk about with Drake and business and UMG and like his contract negotiations and stuff. So that's what I've been doing ever since. And that part has gone viral. You're right. And like, I've gotten like a ton of new followers and like a bunch of Drake fans, obviously, who are like, wow, like I artists, including like small time artists just getting started or mid tier. And they're like, man, I never knew this business side of the business, and I find this like really interesting because there's obviously a lot of like power maneuvers and the Game of Thrones type of stuff that goes on, but like people don't always appreciate it, and so and I think that's a lot of what happened with the whole Kendrick versus Drake thing. It was like people thought it was like a rapper battle, but as Drake said on the album, like he's suing the man. He's not suing another rapper.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would imagine now you live in the Bridle Path area. You got the Drake follow, because I see that when I was going through your following. Have you and Drake spoken since you've been going viral, or even before that? This episode is sponsored by Gamdom. Join 60 million players who know where the real action is. Gamdom delivers elite odds that the big name books can't touch. 15% instant rakebacks on your first week, lightning fast crypto wallet withdrawals, and you could live stream the action while you win. Right now, you can use the code welovehiphop at gamdom.com/r/welovehiphop to start earning free rewards. Again, that's gamdom.com/r/welovehiphop and start winning. Big salute to the sponsors. Cheer!
No, I never met him, never spoken with him. I've talked with like his head of security. That's as far up the Drake like posse like food chain that I've gotten. And so, but yeah, no, it's I mean, it's amazing. He followed. He liked one of my videos the other day where I was talking about one of the things that I appreciate most about Drake, is that he always stayed grounded in the fact that he was from Toronto. And when I was growing up in the 80s, for example, like I don't know, Maestro Fresh West was like like the first like Canadian rapper that I followed, and
Hmm.
he was always from Toronto, but I remember seeing like people like I don't know Snow maybe or others, and they would like try to back away from the fact that they were from Toronto, maybe to sort of give the impression that they were really from Atlanta or really from I don't know New York or LA or something like that. And Drake, when you think about it, like when Drake was just getting started, like people were naturally skeptical of him because he's coming from Degrassi and all that sort of stuff. He had every reason to kind of shed his Toronto background, and yet he never did.
Right.
And I think a lot of people from Toronto are the same, and like they you see that on their Instagram bios where they'll say like I'm from Miami/Toronto, or I'm from LA hyphen New York hyphen Toronto, which usually always means they're really from Toronto, but they're kind of half embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
And like Drake was never like that. So anyway, that I did this video the other day, and he ended up liking that one. So
Oh, that's dope. That's dope. So even like with the fandom, like with the people that are coming into your, that are starting to follow you and stuff, right? What have you
yeah.
started seeing, like as far as like the change? Like, have you been changing up the content? I'm seeing more Drake videos. Are you getting people looking at you as like an insider at this point?
Well, I think they look at me like a guy who's got some good opinions about just the business of the music business, and and that's helpful to them. So you're right though, like it's a totally different audience for me. To be honest with you, like I spent most of my time like on social media on Twitter before, because that's where
Hmm.
like people talk about stocks and what's going on in the markets and stuff, and people get really nerdy in that world and stuff, and it's all text based, so they're talking at each other in text. Whereas this new world, like Drake followed me on Instagram, and I didn't have much of a following on Instagram. I didn't spend a lot of time on Instagram, but I noticed like all the new follows are happening on Instagram. So and it's the people that are following me are people from inside the music business, like current or former like A&R executives, or talent managers. They're artists themselves. Speech from Arrested Development, for example, like followed me and stuff.
Nice.
Some celebrities and stuff, like former athletes, like former NBA players and NFL players and all this kind of stuff. And what's interesting is and then I got my share of hate, like probably from a lot of the Kendrick bots that exist online, people telling me like to shut up, and what do you know about hip hop? You're just like you're a white guy. I got a lot at the beginning, or who's this grandpa talking about hip hop? But I've noticed like the criticisms like that have gone down, and now I'm getting more of like I get referred to as Unk a lot now, and OG, which I'm sort of proud of. So yeah, it's and people are saying, hey, I like hearing about this, and they're also saying things like, hey, I want to know more about stocks. Can you talk about stocks? I want to better my family. I want to better my lot in life, and so I'm really hopeful. I mean that hopefully. I'll be able to take that kind of a message more broadly, because I can't talk about Drake, or at some point, talking every day about Drake will get repetitive, and you got to move on to kind of new content, just like Drake has to record new kinds of songs to keep it fresh.
No, for sure, for sure. Well, I guess I can ask you a lot of business questions based on some of the things that have been going on around Drake and contractually. So, for example, like he dropped these 3 albums, right?
Right.
And a lot of people are rumoring that these were for him to get out of his contract. Um, First, let me ask you your thoughts on that as making a move to get out of a record deal. Do you think that's a good move, or is that even a thing? Or
Well, yeah, I'd say two things. Like, number one, like just be, paying close attention to, the Drake world and the hip hop world in these last few weeks leading up to the album release. There's a lot of like misinformation that gets spread online in social media that you cannot take as fact.
Mhm.
And so the truth is, like, we don't really know like what Drake's current deal is, and what his future deal is. So we do know that he signed a these are facts now, I'm going to tell you. we do know, like in 2021, he signed his last deal with UMG, and they didn't announce it until May of 2022 on their earnings call. But
Right.
the details of what they signed were kept private, and probably like locked down under NDA. So there's been speculation that, for example, it was a $400 million deal, but that's never been proven, or it was a LeBron type of deal, but we just don't know, and we don't know like what they agreed to. Was he supposed to deliver 6 records? Was he supposed to deliver 8 records? For whatever the amount was that he signed, the LeBron type of deal. We just don't know. So it's been reported like, oh yeah, he did the 3 to get out of his contract. So it might be true. That might be, put him over the goal line where
Hmm.
now he is freed up. But we just don't know. And so I just want to point that out first of all. And the second issue is like, we know that Drake and UMG could have started having these conversations in 2025, but
Right.
obviously they don't have a deal yet. We're in 2026. So this could go on a while, and even if Drake decided today, let's say he's free and clear of his contract, and said, "Hey, I'm killing this deal." There might be conditions from the prior contract that he signed where there's like a tail period where he can't do it. He can't release a new album for like 18 months or something like that.
Hmm.
So we just don't know like all that information. But if so that's one thing. But I think the question you were driving at was like, is he better off leaving UMG?
Yeah.
And like again, like there's we don't know like what UMG could be considering offering him to stay. We know like he had the LeBron type deal before. The truth is like if that was the LeBron deal before, it's probably going to have to be 2 or 3 or 4x that this time to keep him. But they might want to keep him. They might make him an offer he can't refuse. But like assuming like they don't get crazy stupid in terms of what they offer,
So hold
that
on, let me stop
like
you there. What
Mhm.
would be an offer that he can't refuse? Because there's rumors floating around about a private equity firm wanting to offer him $2 billion.
Right.
There's also a rumor that he had asked UMG for $1 billion for his renegotiation, and they said no. So that's why they're in the legal issues, or part of the reasons why they're in the legal issues they're in now. What would be a good number that Drake can't refuse, in your opinion? I want to give a quick minute to give a shout out to Exotic Hot Pots, Canada's loudest brand. From high grade strains to authentic grabber and all the rolling essentials, Exotic Hot Pots is about elevating your smoking session in true 5-star fashion. If you want delivery, make sure to hit them up on their Instagram page, Exotic Hot Pot, and let them know that the We Love Hip Hop crew sent you. Big salute to the sponsors. Cheer!
I mean, I think if it's something like a billion, and we're obviously we're talking USD here,
Mhm.
a billion one. I think I had some analysis I put up on a free Substack, which is like eventhorizoniq.substack.com, where I said like he's worth this new deal that he's worth 1.1 billion. Is what I calculated.
Mm.
And so if UMG came forward and said, hey, here it is, we'll sign out for this. I mean that and then you get into the discussions of like control of his catalog, like what does he have control of now? What does
Right.
he want control of in the past, for example? And then you get into those kinds of discussions. So assuming like they played ball with like a big number like that, if they played ball in terms of giving him catalog access, if I don't know, if I was in the room and I was advising him, I'd say, wow, this is a pretty good offer. But if they are playing games, and again, we don't know, but there seems to be like a lot of like, where there's smoke, there's fire here. That like Sir Lucian high-fiving Dr. Dre at the Grammys 2 years ago with Kendrick. People speculating that they were trying to like basically trash Drake's image
Hmm.
in order to kind of get the dollar amount down that they'd have to pay for his next deal. Like that's the conspiracy theory stuff going out there. So assuming they don't want to play ball, then would he be better off going independent? Probably, for sure. Yeah, releasing his next album through like OVO Sound direct, doing deals with Spotify and Apple Music direct. He's got the brand. People come to him. People aren't going to Universal Music, to get it. Like those guys are just basically toll booth operators. Like there's, I would say, like there's very little value add that they're bringing to a guy like Drake these days.
Well, I have a little bit of pushback. Okay. One, as far as the evaluation of 1.1 billion, I feel that it's way higher than that. I've been hearing numbers like 5 billion being thrown around. All right. So can we start there? Like, how did you come up with how did you come to the conclusion of 1.1 billion?
Well, for most of the value in this number is streaming related, and kind of basically it's like a forward looking, what's Drake going to generate, over the, if you're talking about a 5-year contract or 6-year contract, what's his catalog and his new music going to generate in terms of streams over these next 5 years. So that's sort of like how you derive the value. Like the merch, the OVO is separate. The tours are typically separate, right? It's like, so we're kind of leaving that out of it. So it's basically the numbers sort of built on, look at the Spotify charts, look at like how many, right now, obviously it's full of Drake songs,
Right.
It's like, I don't know, something crazy, like 48 out of top 50 Spotify tracks for like Drake songs or something nuts like that. And so, but like what's it gonna be like 6 months from now, 12 months from now? Somebody's got to like figure that out. And so the 1 billion, is like a pretty, that's a number that is Drake's net number, but like the gross number is like what Universal obviously is going to take a tax on what they get paid from Spotify and Apple Music and stuff. So it's a number that they feel good at and that Drake feels good at. It's kind of like these sports rights deals that we see with like the NBA or the NFL. Like, people like ESPN or whatever, TSN or Sportsnet, they go to the leagues and they say, hey, we'll pay you this much. And it sounds like a huge dollar amount. And that's the number that's going to the leagues. But those networks, they wouldn't pay that number if there wasn't something in it for them. So they're still making a lot of money too off of that. And it's, so it's Universal can make money there too. So, but presumably like Drake can make more. Now, maybe like, am I being too conservative in my assumptions? Like, is Drake going to be like stream more music in the next few years? It looks like it based on Iceman. Like it's interesting because if you look, when I initially sat down and I was trying to think, like everybody talks about what's he going to do in his first week of sales on Iceman, right? People just sort of throw numbers out there. I tried to kind of, again, put like my business hat on and build an AI model to help me predict. And when I first started it maybe like a month ago, the first version of the model that I created came up with something like it estimated that Drake was only going to do something like mid 200,000s for Iceman in his first week, which was on the lower end if you compared to like something if you looked at Kalshi or Polymarket. And the reason why is that the last few albums for Drake, they've been coming in kind of lower and lower first week, right? And he's getting older too, right? He's about to turn 40. And you look at like, there aren't that many rappers, outside of Eminem who like blazed the trail here of like continuing to make hip hop albums after 40. But typically like, it keeps trailing off. So my first model's assumption was like, well, Drake's been on this path, this sort of downward glide path. He's getting older. And so it's more likely he's going to disappoint. But then in the lead up to the release of Iceman, you could see the streams on Spotify just spike. And that sort of told, and you saw the response to the ice sculptures. Like when they did that in Toronto, like, and within like a day or two, it was something crazy, like 70 or 80 corporate companies put out on their social medias a copycat version of the ice sculptures, like for their own brands, like the Kentucky Fried Chicken, version of ice sculptures and stuff. And so to like what that said to me as a business analyst is like Drake is just like not the typical, 40-year-old rapper, right? Like there is something special about him and his bond with his audience and his connection across, globally and with brands as well. That, when I redid the numbers and I sort of looked at the ramp of the Spotify streams, I came up with the estimate that Iceman's going to do 530,000 in sales for the first week. So
Wow.
we'll probably find out, I guess, obviously in a few days from now, how accurate that is. But now that's on the upper end of like what the other estimates that I've seen out there.
No, you're actually kind of spot on as far as what I've been seeing online. I've seen the projections being 520 in the first week. So if the system that you created um gave you 530, you're pretty much right there, dude. Give or take
Yeah.
maybe a couple of tens of thousands.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, this is like gets inside baseball, but like I didn't expect he to release 3 albums, right? Like I don't think any of us knew that was going to happen. And so people were saying like initially, like, oh man, like the numbers are going to be even bigger than 500 like now because he's got 3 albums. But remember, there's 3 separate albums, like 3 separate sound scans, so they're counted separately. So we're going to see the numbers for Iceman, we're going to see the numbers for Maid of Honor, we're going to see the numbers for Habibti. But they'll probably Habibti and Maid of Honor. I saw the estimates would be like 120 or 130 or something for the first
Yeah.
week. But they don't count towards Iceman. So that the Iceman is when I say 530. That's for Iceman.
So just to get a little bit more about you, because you mentioned the AI prompt that you created, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about let me see the names that I found here. It was Event Horizon IQ. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what that entails?
Sure. So yeah, I have a company. It's like a website called Event Horizon IQ that different companies subscribe to, as well as like individuals. It's more on the higher end. It's like $250 a month type of subscription. But the reason why they do it's basically a place where I use the different AI models that I've built to make different predictions
Right.
about business, about stocks, about stock prices, about like how stocks are going to move before and after earnings. Things like, well, Apple's going to report its earnings on Thursday at 4 o'clock. Apple's now trading at whatever, $250. Is it going to be higher or lower? These are all things that, now we've gotten used to prediction markets, right? We've gotten used to like going to Kalshi or going to Polymarket and thinking that those markets are more accurate than the stock market. And the way that those things work is like people are making bets, like people are actually betting their real money, like on different questions, like will Apple stock be higher or lower on Thursday afternoon? And supposedly, and by the way, Drake has a couple of, he has this Polymarket mention in one of his tracks on Iceman, and he specifically calls out the CEO of Polymarket in another one of his tracks, Shane Copeland. But so these things are big now. They're like both worth like 12 or 15 billion dollars or something. But they're and if you got the CEOs on your show, you'd say like, well, why are they right? And they would say, oh, well, like the wisdom of crowds. Like if we're people are putting their money to work, that's going to predict faster that Trump is in the lead, for example. But in some of the research that I've done, I've found like AI is like obviously getting smarter and smarter, and some of the models that we've built are able to kind of put their finger on different predictions quicker than even Kalshi or Polymarket. So
Wow.
so when I say like I have this prediction for Iceman, like we were significantly higher than Kalshi or Polymarket when I put that prediction out like a few weeks ago. I had predictions about who's going to get elected, in like different contests. We can tell certain things. There are certain cues that tell us like which leaders are kind of in the lead in some race, or even if a leader like Pierre Poilievre will ever have a chance of being elected. And the short answer is no, he won't. And so like, and our AIs like said, like he could stay on as long as he wants. He could try to put off the inevitable, but a guy like that is just like, he's never going to make a connection with the population who votes for him. And so chances are that he'll ever win or suddenly, have a personality transplant or something like that, and then suddenly, go to victory. It's very, very remote. So there are interesting things like that. And so Event Horizon is that sort of model. So people are subscribing there to kind of get access early to our predictions that hopefully are, we say they're upstream from Kalshi and Polymarket. So
And
you're,
Polymarket.
basically you're gonna hopefully, like, you're gonna hear sooner that Drake is gonna hit this number in his first week of sales, or you're gonna hear sooner that whether whoever is up going to run in 2028 for the U.S. Presidential election, who's going to win that, for example. So it as well as more like financial oriented questions, like where's the price of Bitcoin going, where's the price of XYZ stock going.
Interesting. So based on the information you just gave me there, right? And we're gonna getting close to the end of our conversation here as far as like all of the Drake stuff, because like, we're right in Iceman season, so I want to make sure that we get all of the information that we can, as far as like everything Drake related. But based on everything that you just told me right there, did you make an AI model to make a prediction on the lawsuit that he has versus UMG?
Roll Ready Detailing, now open 7 days a week from 8 to 5 p.m. 750 Oakdale Road, Unit 66, specializing in ceramic coating perpetual with warranty, PPF, tints, wraps, vinyl wraps, and hand car washes. Remember, we clean anything on wheels.
And the odds of him actually winning the appeal that he's put against UMG.
I haven't done that actually. It's a good idea.
So
was another big.
If you haven't done that, what do you think would happen then?
Yeah, well, I am going to run that through my AI model now that you told me that, because I don't know if you follow this, but like just yesterday there was like some big famous lawsuit case in the U.S. involving Elon Musk, where Elon Musk sued the owner of ChatGPT, OpenAI, and because like at one point Elon Musk was a part owner of the business that owns ChatGPT, and so they went to a lawsuit, and we actually did build a model. He ended up losing the lawsuit, and we predicted that like a couple of weeks ago that he was going to lose, and we had had higher odds that he would lose than Kalshi, and so we could take this. We could feed the same court. We just have to get access to the court filings and all the information that's gone back and forth between UMG and Drake. But that's a solvable question. So, but not having done that yet, just giving you my answer. My guess is probably Drake probably is saying that he's going to countersue and keep pushing, but probably he's facing like a kind of a pessimistic path in going down that road. Unfortunately, I think he probably did it though to make a point, to send a signal to UMG itself, to the whole industry, to the press who covers it. And basically the message was that hey, this isn't just a Kendrick beef. This goes much higher. This is me, talking to Lucian, who's the CEO of UMG, and we have we have issues, and it's and basically a signal that hey, I'm interested in shaking things up in the whole industry. So he's kind of put that out there. They might back up the dump truck with a lot of money and try to keep him in there. But I think the signals are that he is going to go independent. Now, guys, there's people like Steve Stout, like very, very well-known, record executive in the US, who said a few years ago that if Drake ever did that, it would potentially like dismantle the whole music industry. Yep. And I don't know about that, but like the industry is definitely in a much weaker position today than it was a few years ago when Steve said that. But it's almost at the point where somebody's going to have to be the first penguin off of the ice flow, and but it's going to happen. Like we all know, like eventually that's going to happen, because it just doesn't make sense to have these like three big companies that really do nothing for their artists, just they're toll collectors, taxing the artists basically, and kind of locking in the younger artists to these like onerous long-term deals. Right. Somebody's going to have to break it. And I think like Drake is like perfectly positioned to be the guy who does it.
Now, and that's a great response right there. But let's say if you were his business advisor, He's got all of this, promotion right now. He's got this whole world paying attention to him. He's in a place where he could possibly be renegotiating with these labels or with another company. Who knows? What would you advise him as far as moving forward with this appeal or not?
I'd probably say to pursue it.
Okay.
It doesn't cost that much in the grand scheme of things. It's basically just lawyers' fees to kind of keep pushing it. And I think like his big manager, is a big advisor, is the guy named Future the Prince. He's like been with him forever, and obviously given him great advice. So I'm sure he's going to continue to get great advice from Future. But I think he's probably just would be saying to Drake, just keep your maximum negotiating power, right? Like you don't have to rush to do a deal with UMG. You're surfing a wave of positivity right now, like in terms of the acclaim for Iceman. That's going to continue to roll as time goes on, with like more and more tracks continue to percolate and stay on the tops of the charts, and opportunities are going to come to you. And so you want to sit back, you want to listen. There have been, I agree with you, like there have been these reports that like, hey, private equity is going to show up and write a big check. Like I've heard 1 billion, I've heard 2 billion too. But we don't know. Like there's this Gamma a company out there that's backed by private equity that is legit, and that may take a run at a guy like Drake, or maybe some new one. The only thing I'd say on that front is that like today, the private equity world, the people that would write the big checks like that, it's very different than say like in 2021 or 2022, when there was like low interest rates. All those private equity firms, including ones you'd never heard of in like places like Dubai and Bahrain and Qatar and stuff, like they had money coming out of their ears because the interest rates were so low.
Right.
Now we're in this world where interest rates are higher. Those guys aren't doing as well. They don't have as much money just lying around. Don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of people with billions out there that can write like multi-billion-dollar checks to a person like Drake. But it's a little tighter. So if I was Future, I would just say, hey, we don't have to rush. Let's take our time. Let's make the right choices. I'd probably, say to Future and Drake, hey, you guys might want to think about pushing harder on the direct to consumer stuff, like by which I mean like the business plans. Obviously, they've got OVO, but there's so many people are doing other stuff these days, like more so the women, with like obviously Rihanna with Fenty, but Hailey Bieber, for example, just sold. She built and sold a cosmetics company that she started called Rode
Yep.
for $1 billion in less than 3 years. Like that's like unheard of. And so Drake's not going to start a cosmetics company, but he's obviously going to do something like that would appeal to his audience,
Right.
which is global, which is men and women. And so I would look for more opportunities like that to pursue too.
Yeah, direct to consumer. A question that I wanted to ask that just popped into my head. Why are all of these private equity firms buying up people's catalogs? That's something that's been a trend over the last 5 years I've been seeing, where a lot of people have been selling their catalogs for upwards of $100 million. Really, really famous people. Why are they buying these catalogs? What's the purpose? What are they going to do with these catalogs in the future?
Well, these private equity firms, like they've got like armies of MBAs working there, and these guys and gals just sit around all day cranking out numbers and doing
Sorry to
estimates.
interrupt you. For all the audience who doesn't understand, MBAs.
Masters of business administration. So these are like people that they went to college or university for 4 years. Then they go work at a bank like TE or whatever in investment banking or something like that. And then they decided like, hey, I want to go back for more schooling. And they go back for a 2-year masters of business administration, which is like a 2-year business degree. And it used to be thought of like, oh, this is going to be my ticket, like to continue to move up, like working at the bank or whatever, and I'll get a bigger paycheck if I do that. But like the people that typically get the MBAs, not to not to talk down to them or anything like that, but they typically like look at the world in a very analytical way, in a numbers only way, and like profit maximization, like that's all they think about all day long. And so they get hired by these like private equity firms, and their jobs, especially as younger people, their 20s and 30s working at these firms, is they crank out numbers and projections about like how much is this beauty, new beauty product like DTC, direct to consumer, like Rode, is how much is that going to be worth? And the thing about royalties or catalogs is that it gets very easy to build a model to project into the future how much these songs are going to be worth, because you can look at how many people have streamed these songs in the last, say, 5 years. So like how popular they are. You can make some assumptions about how popular that back catalog is going to be like in the next 5 years. And then you can make some assumptions about like, okay, like if they drop like 5 new albums, one a year for the next 5 years, like, okay, we can count how many streams are going to be in year one and how many. So they do all this and they figure out what it's worth. And then they go to the artist and they say, if the artists control them, hey, we'd like to buy this from you. And the really appealing thing to artists is that they write a big check up front. And so, but I made a video, I think it was yesterday, about Michael Jackson, and just to kind of tell his story real quick, because it's kind of tragic. Like Michael, he was brilliant in business in a lot of ways, because in 1983 he made the song "Say Say Say" with Paul McCartney, right? This duet, and I think when they were making the video for it, which is a great video by the way, Paul McCartney said, "Hey Michael, have you ever heard of royalties related to catalogs?" And Michael didn't know anything about it. And he said, like, these could be great investments, and you should look into this. And Michael, he sort of logged that in his brain, and then he goes away. And 2 years later, like not even 2 years later, Michael, out of nowhere, bid for and won the back catalog for the Beatles. He paid $47.5 million for something called ATV, which controlled the back catalog of the Beatles. And he outbid Paul McCartney and like some of the other Beatles who wanted to buy it themselves, as well as a bunch of other companies who were in the bidding. So imagine if you're Paul McCartney, this guy that you gave advice to 2 years ago, it like goes and does that. So, but it was a brilliant move, because 20 years later, that entity, like ATV, was worth $1.5 billion. So it had gone up from 50 million to $1.5 billion. But the problem with Michael is that Michael overspent. Michael, like, even though when the King of Pop days, he was making all this money, from Thriller and touring and everything, Pepsi commercials and all that, he was spending like $50 million a year. He bought Neverland Ranch for like 17 million. And the problem was he was spending more than he was making. And like it happens to all of us, right? Whether we're rich or poor, but even the rich people, even the celebrities have this problem too. And so what does he do? Well, he, when it's like, we're talking millions of dollars, like he was in debt to, he couldn't just like go and get a home equity line of credit at the bank. So he took the Beatles catalog and he started mortgaging against that asset. And little by little, so it covered him for like the first few years, but then he had to go back and like he mortgaged it again. And then he went to his record company, Sony, and Sony said, Michael, we'll help you out again, but this time we want a 50-50 interest in this ATV thing. And so he was sort of like sort of a distressed seller, right? Like he didn't have anybody else he could go to because he'd already started borrowing from Sony. So he did that deal. And then a few years later, like basically he tried to get out of it. He tried to run around. He went to the Gulf. He lived in Bahrain for a year or two, and he tried to get a prince from Bahrain to help buy out Sony to get the ATV rights back. And but Sony, because he'd signed a contract, Sony said, no, we don't have to, because you've already signed this deal in the past. So Michael was in this tough position where he basically eventually he died, and his estate had to sell the whole thing, and there was only one buyer, which was Sony. So it like if he had been able to kind of live within his means, if he'd been able to kind of hang on to that asset, it would have been worth a lot more. So when I see these stories, like I think Justin Bieber just sold his catalog, I can't remember for how much. What worries me is that these are artists that, again, have gotten in this trap of living beyond their means, thinking the money's going to continue to roll in forever, and they see this as a quick fix to their cash flow issues, and by doing this, the other side who's writing the check, they wouldn't do that if they didn't know that they were going to be making money, probably a lot of money from writing this check now. So
Yeah.
I've been trying to say in the last few days to artists, like, you want to continue to try to keep control. You can do deals with record labels, that's fine, but always try to keep control of your IP that you're creating, your songs. And don't read your contracts carefully. Now we've got ChatGPT and Claude and things like this, like, so it's much easier to be smarter about these legal protections than people like 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, certainly. So and also, I think young artists need to be thinking about, like, what's my direct connection with my audience? Like, am I building an email list? Am I building connections? Do I have even like if I have a following on Instagram, like, it's not really my following because I have to go through Instagram to kind of get to access to those people. You want to have like
Yeah.
a direct connection. So YouTube, subscribers are better, for example, than Twitter followers or Instagram followers, for example.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from this conversation is try to be as direct to consumer as possible when you're in this music business,
Right.
especially in
You should be thinking.
2026.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to be thinking like the Haley Bieber, like, that's a role model, like that, thinking of it like, how did she create this $1 billion business in 3 years? Well, if you're a rapper, or if you're an artist, like, what's going to be my $1 billion business in 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now? It's probably not going to happen as quickly as it did for her, but you want to be thinking like the way she did it, and how can I apply those lessons to myself?
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. So, in conclusion, for you, where do you go from here with this newfound virality from the Drake rollout and everything, with what you already do? Where do you go from here?
Well, I'm I'm going to keep building my business. Like, my hedge fund, like, it's not something like that's open to the public, so I'm not looking to like cash in on it, directly. But I did start talking about, like, last year when I first started, standing in front of Drake's house. I started getting like emails all the time from people, and not just in Canada, but like around the world, where they were saying like, hey, like, I've got like 3 or 4 side hustles. I'm like finding it harder and harder to like make ends meet. Cost of living is like crazy. Cost to buy a house, whether they're talking about Switzerland or Canada, is like, it's way too high, or Saudi Arabia even. So. People were increasingly like looking at, how do I get into the stock market? I'm interested in Open Door or Carvana and stuff, and they were like asking me like, what should they do? And so I started talking about it, and I coined a term I call rising dynasty, which is basically like, hey, we're all in the same boat. We're all not as rich as we would hope to be, and we're trying to lift ourselves up, right? And stocks is a great way to do it, and much better than like sports betting and things like this. And so I would meet like painters who would be like, yeah, I paint all day, and then like I study stocks like 2 or 3 hours at night, and but I would talk with them, and like they'd be asking me like quantum computing, and I'd like, holy cow, this painter knows like more about quantum computing than I do. And it would really impress me. And so now with this like recent virality, like bringing in this whole new group of people who are from the hip hop world, I sense the same hunger from that audience too. So like, I'm hoping like that I can connect the two, and hopefully sort of help people. And sometimes people say like, oh, so Eric, what are you going to do? You're going to sell a class? You're going to sell a book? And the answer is like, no, I don't want to do that. I think we've gotten so used to it in this world of like, where everything like leads to a click on Instagram, where you're going to have to, if somebody's telling you to buy something. Like, I don't think that's what I want to do, but I do want to inspire people. I do want to say, hey, the best resource is you. Nobody from the government is going to be showing up at your house, knocking on the door with a bag of money to kind of drop in your lap. You're going to have to make it happen. You're going to have to hustle. You're going to have to educate yourself, pull yourself up. But there's like so many, like, we're so lucky. Like, we're a keyboard away from like typing in, information that people like, 20, 30 years ago, like they couldn't, like they had to physically go to the library to kind of do some research on a Tuesday afternoon for this stuff. And it's all like in our pockets. So I
Yep.
think there's never been a better chance to kind of better ourselves and learn from each other. And so, I just want to figure out ways to continue to kind of get that message out and hopefully inspire people and help people learn from each other.
Oh, well said, sir. Well said. Well, listen, man, I really enjoyed this conversation that we had. I think I learned a lot from this, and I think the audience is also going to be able to learn a lot from this as far as the business, but some of the behind the scenes questions that they might want answered, as far as how they things that they've been wondering about, as far as the music business or just business period, right?
Mhm.
And I'm really excited to see where your journey goes from here, Eric. So I really appreciate your time as well, man.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate the opportunity and to be on your platform, and it's been great catching up.
No, well, thank you, man. All right, there we have it, man. Eric Jackson in the building, right? Hopefully, you guys learned something from this conversation right here. Make sure to hit that like button before you get out of here, and make sure to give us a hype on your phone if you're watching from your mobile. All right, we are off of this. Deuces.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to check out these other videos on the screen and make sure to like and subscribe.
We love hip hop.